This video is to show you how to do regression using your graphing calculator. In Desmos, you would do regression with the y sub 1 tilde and then your parent function. So if I wanted to do linear, it would be ax sub 1 plus b, or you could do mx sub 1 plus b, same thing. If you wanted to do quadratics, it would be y sub 1 tilde ax sub 1 squared plus bx sub 1 plus c. You can do any regression in Desmos as long as you know the parent function. So exponential would be y sub 1 tilde ab to the x sub 1. So your regression, as long as you know the parent function in Desmos, you can create them. The calculator, you don't have to know the parent functions because it's already loaded in the calculator. So we want to plug in our table just like in Desmos. In order to plug in a table into your calculator, you have to go to the stat key. This is your statistics. So we're going to go stat key. We have edit, calc, and test. So edit is actually where you put your list in. So we want to edit our list, so we're going to press enter on 1. L sub 1 should be your x's, and L sub 2 should be your y's. So I'm going to type in my x's at -5, and I'm going to press enter, and it goes down. -3, enter. -1, enter. 2, enter. 4, enter. Now I'm going to go over to the L sub 2 for the y's, and my y's goes back up to the top for you. It says 47, enter. 7, enter. -9, enter. 12, enter. And 56, enter. Making sure that we have the same amount of x's as we do y's. Now that we have our table in, we want to go do the regression. So we're going to go back to that stat key because this is where our information is located. Now, instead of us editing anything, we're going to calculate our regression. So we're going to press the right arrow key to calculate. So we have one variable statistics. That's what you would use for your box plot, for your mean, median, mode, all that kind of stuff. Two variable statistics, median to median, linear regression. This is ax plus b instead of mx. It's still linear regression. There's your quad regression, so that's quadratic regression. There's cubic regression, quartic regression, linear regression as well, but it's in the other format where your y-intercept is first. So that's another form of it. Most students do not use that form only because we know it's slope then intercept. That's the way we've always learned it. Then we have natural log regression. We have exponential regression. So we have linear, quadratic, and exponential regression. We have power regression, which is helpful when we're doing inverse variations. We have logistics. We have sine regression, so if you want to graph a sine curve. We have manual fit, y equals mx plus b, quick plot and fit equation, and it goes back up to the top. So if we're looking at this, we would want to know which regression we're looking at. We can do linear regression, quadratic regression, exponential regression, and see which one fits. So if we're looking at this, it's going down and then it goes back up. So I'm thinking it's going to be quadratic regression just by looking at those y values. So I'm actually going to press quadratic regression, so number 5. Now here's the difference between the calculator and Desmos. Yes, the calculator has these stored in there for you, but Desmos will already graph the plots for you, so you don't have to, you would already be seeing the graph. And it would graph the equation for you once you do it. Your calculator will not graph the equation for you unless you tell it to. So we want to make sure for quadratic regression, our x list, so our x values were in our L1, our y values were in our L2, and that is correct. We don't need to talk about anything with frequency list. But on this line right here, it says store regression EQ. That's where you would store that equation we're going to get. We want to store the equation so we can graph it. So we want to go on to where it says vars. This is where we go to talk about vars, or to store the regression equation. So we press vars, and we want the y vars because that's where we want to store it into our y equals so that we can graph it. So we're going to press the right arrow key to y vars. It is going to be a function because we're not doing parametric or polar. We want a function, so we press enter on 1. And we want to store it in any of these that we want to. So right now I have nothing in my calculator, so I want to put it in y sub 1. That's going to be the first equation. I'm going to press enter on that. Now I know that whatever equation I get for the quadratic regression, will be stored in my y equals. So that means I can graph it. So I'm going to go down to calculate, and now I'm going to let it calculate the quadratic regression. Press enter, and it tells me the parent function, and it tells me the a, the b, and the c. So I'm going to write that out as y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and my a is 3, so it's going to be y equals 3x squared. My b is 4, so I'm going to put plus 4x, and then my c value is negative 8. So I'm going to put, instead of plus, I'm going to put minus 8. So what should happen is if I go to my y equals, this exact equation should be stored already without me having to type it. So my y equals, this equation is stored. Now it is to multiple decimals, and that's okay because it's just trying to get it as accurate as possible. But there's a lot of zeros, 1, but those are the same numbers as what it was here. I did not have to type this in because that's what that vars button did for us. So now I can press graph, and my graph will actually plot. Now, I don't have my data points in there either. I want to be able to see my data points to see, does it fit well? So to show that, I want to go to my stat plot, because my stat is where my coordinates were. So I'm going to go to my second y equals, because that's blue stat plot. I want to turn my L1, L2, that's my x and my y, I want to turn that on. So I'm going to press enter on that, and I want to turn it on. The type are going to be the dots. Now I can come down here and I can change them to multiple different things, but I want to have the dots. And my color is going to be, I can change my color to red. I'll change my dots to be red. So I'm going to press enter. Now I'm going to press graph again. So there are my red dots, and there's my blue parabola going through those red dots. Now, if I want to see more of my dots, because I should have 5 data points on there, I can go to zoom, and I want to go to zoom stat, because those are my stat buttons. I'm going to go to zoom stat so it shows me all of the data points. So I'm going to press the number 9. And here are all my red data points, and I can see that my parabola is going through it perfectly. So I can tell that this is a quadratic regression. Now, with this being said, I'm going to press second mode, because that's quit. It says blue quit, so second quit. And I actually want to get the linear regression as well, so I'm not going to clear my calculator. I'm going to go back to stat calc, because again, I already have my data points in there. I want to do linear regression, so I'm going to do number 4. I still have L1 and L2 in there. I want to store my regression equation so I can graph it. So I'm going to go to my vars key. I'm going to go to y vars, so press over. It is a function, but this time instead of putting it into y1, I'm going to put it into y sub 2, because my quadratic is in y sub 1. So I'm going to put my linear in y sub 2. So I'm going to press enter on y sub 2. I'm going to let it calculate. This would be my linear equation, so y equals 1.29x plus 23.38. That would be my linear equation. I can also do exponential regression as well, and I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to go to stat, I want to do calculate, and I want to do exponential, which if I scroll down is 0, so exponential regression. Then x's are at L1, y's are in L2. I want to store my regression equation, so vars, y vars. It is a function, but this time again I want to change it to y sub 3, because I have quadratic, then I have linear, and then I'm going to have my exponential. So I'm going to put in y sub 3. I'm going to press calculate, and it would not be an exponential because the data points don't match that, and that's fine. So we know that it cannot be exponential. So I'll just quit that. So if I go to my zoom stat, which I was already in, so I could have just pressed graph, but zoom stat again. Here are my data points. We can see that the quadratic is going through it perfectly. And here comes the linear equation. So we can see that that linear equation does not go through those red dots perfectly, which means that the linear equation would not be the correct regression. It would not be the equation of best fit. So regression in your calculator is already stored for you. You just have to make sure that you have your stat. Go to stat, because that's where you're putting your statistics. You go to edit because we want to make sure our list has the x's and the y's in there. And you go back to that stat key because that's where everything is for this, for regression. We go over to calculate because we want to find the regression equations. We have linear equation, quadratic, cubic, quartic, another linear regression. We have natural log regression, and exponential regression, power regression. Those are the most common ones we're going to use. So linear, quadratic, cubic, exponential, power, we will use those more often than any other ones. So that is how you do regression on the calculator versus Desmos.